Hi there and welcome to video 2 about this spreadsheet model. So we're going to start looking at a few more uses of different formula and functions within this video, and also starting to look at some validation. I did suggest that in the first video that we might get onto macros in the second video, but actually it's taken me a little bit longer than what I thought it would do. But you know, there's however many videos it takes is however many it's going to take ultimately. So what I want to do now is I want to start bringing in some extra. Sorry, it was doing things that I wasn't expecting them. And I want to bring in a couple of extra formulas. So I want to start bringing in this sum formula. So I want an overall total. Down here, there's lots of different total. I mean, guys, if I was taking lots of time to actually sit and think about every single one of these, you know, I could give them probably more suitable column names. I mean, ultimately, as long as you kind of know what the actual column does, I think that's kind of the main thing, really. So for this overall total, I wanted to add all this up, okay? And this is where we can use this auto sum. And you can see one click of a button, and I have a formula. But what, excuse me, not a formula, a function. So the difference between formula and functions, if you can't remember, if you look at the I'm trying to think of the right word. I'm sure there's a fancy word. It eludes me at the minute. But basically, anything that starts equals and has a word after it is going to be a function. Whereas if it's equals plus or whatever, then you will find it is a formula. So I'm going to click on return there, and then I have a final figure. So this game has worked out at a profit of what looks like about £4.3 million. What I'm also going to try and do is use a couple more examples of functions here, just nice simple ones, just so we can pad out our examples of oh, whoops, I didn't mean to start writing it, of all these different types of formula that you can use. So we're going to use an average. I mean, guys, it should be relatively straightforward as to what an average is. And again, we can, I'm actually going to just click on this and then just scroll down to average. And then it's going to want the set of numbers, which is N5 to N32. So the one that it automatically gives you includes the total. Obviously, you don't want an average to include the total. Otherwise, you're going to get a much more inflated average than what you would get otherwise. I mean, you can see that when I changed that, it basically, this figure here that it's given me, so what's that, 152,000, is much larger than if I have the N34 in there. So we don't want to include the overall total within it. I'm going to click OK. We have a figure there. We're going to use a max and a min. So this will find the max figure. I've actually done it too early, haven't I? Max, min. Would help if I put it in the right place, right? So we're looking at, again, N5 to N32. And that's going to give a 501,364. So we have a little scan down here, and we can see it's right at the very bottom. So that is correct. And then a min number, again, exactly the same. So N5 to N32. And we can see here, guys, that in basically the space of 4 minutes, we've added 4 different functions to your spreadsheet. You know, this is what the purpose of this is all about. You know, you are adding volume, you are adding more and more and more different functions, which would totally legitimately take part in your spreadsheet. Now, at the minute, you may have already spotted that we have some things that genuinely would not be possible to exist. So, for example, we haven't started to format any of this stuff yet. This is something that we need to start to do. And I'm going to start it with this tax, because this is the one that's causing the problem. So we're working out 20% of whatever this figure here is, and actually in some cases we're getting too many decimal places, and we need to sort this out, because actually we can't have more than 2 decimal places in anything that is financial. So we can do this decrease decimal. So we can set the decimal places to 2 here, and that will should sort it out. It hasn't sorted out for it in that one. It should have done, because although we'll need to do the same thing here, of course. Okay. Now what I also need to do, because all of these are finance, so the total isn't finance. I don't know why I started to highlight total of them. So these are all, that's all currency. So I can highlight all of that stuff, and then I can hit currency, which is it just makes it look, it starts to make it look a bit more kind of reasonable, and you now look at it and you know straight away that you've got numbers here. So what we can now do is we can start to make it look a bit nicer. Now you guys can take the time to format the general formatting of the spreadsheet. You can do as you want. I mean, I'm sure that you guys know how to do general formatting. I would expect the spreadsheets to look nice when you come to submit them, but what things that you may not kind of be so familiar with are more things like conditional formatting. So there's a couple of different ways to do your conditional formatting. Excel has a number of different things embedded within it, so I can use, for example, a color scale here. Now, color scales, they are useful. I don't particularly like using them in situations like this, because it looks frankly a bit like a rainbow, and it's actually, you get to a point whereby it's actually quite difficult to find some stuff out. And if you have some figures which are way out, then actually, so let's say for example row 25, which is your mobile master simulator, you can see you've got figures of 3, 11, 4 and 9, so that should be red. And your Euro truck simulator, again, that's also red. However, you do have other rows where sales have been poor, or not as good. So for example, if you look at row 15, GTA 5, you've got figures of 958, 980, 1553 and 665, which are not amazing. And actually it's not as easy to spot those as it probably should be, because there's kind of lots of different shades of yellow in the middle of it. So while the automatic kind of color scheme is useful at occasions, I actually prefer it like down here, if I get the word out properly, in the one column. And again, now I can spot things kind of easier in that column. I just find, and it's a personal opinion here, guys, that it's quite difficult to spot if there's kind of a lot of hodgepodge different colours in a big range of figures. So I can use that color scale here. That's great. Okay, but what I'm going to do with these ones is I'm actually going to put in highlight if it meets a certain criteria. So I'm going to conditional formatting, highlight cell rules. I'm going to use 2 different rules. I'm going to have one greater than and one less than. So I'm going to say highlight something if it's greater than, and I'm going to put a number in it, and then I'm going to put highlight it if it's less than, and then I'm going to put another number in there, and I'm going to make the greater than green, and I'm going to make the less than red. So it's going to be quite obvious, as to whether or not it meets the rule or not. So we'll start off with the green, and I'm going to say it's actually got quite a close figure on here already. Let's say 2000. And then I'm just going to change it to green. All right, so I'm being maybe a little bit lazy with that. You could go into custom format and you could, change your format to whatever you want it to be like. I'm just going to go with green fill and dark green text. That'll do me. And then I'm going to do the less than. Now, I don't want it to be less than 2000 because you can see it highlights everything else. I actually genuinely want it to be a bad figure. So let's say 750, shall we? That's still quite a lot of stuff. Let's say, I mean, in the real world, guys, you would actually have specific kind of figures that you might be working with here. So 400, that will do me. And to me, that just makes it look easier. I mean, what I would probably do, and indeed what I do on my own sheets, where, for example, if I make a tracking sheet, I don't tend to change the text color. I just tend to change the background color, and I make it more vibrant, so that if it meets the criteria, then the green would be much more prominent, for example, and if it doesn't meet the criteria, then the red will be much more prominent. But I don't tend to change the actual text color. But that's a personal thing, in this particular example, you're now given 3 different types of conditional formats, and you might be like, well, Mike, well, surely this is one and this is one. But if you think about it, you've actually put 2 cell rules in here. You've used the greater than and you've used the less than. Okay, and with this one, you've just used a color scale. So you've used 3 different methods of conditional formatting, and you can see how quite quickly you build up the amount of evidence that you have in these sheets of things that you can and can't do. Sorry, I've just noticed that this isn't formatted either. There we go, that's nicer. And one of the nice things, of course, with the currency format is that it puts the commas in between. So again, it makes it much easier to actually work out whether or not the number is 1 million or 100,000 or 10 million or whatever. What else we want to put in here is some validation. So we want to be able to restrict the end user from putting in certain erroneous data. Now, we're never going to prevent every single figure being incorrect, but the goal is to reduce the chance of the figure being incorrect. So let's say, for example, if I have my sheet, there's nothing stopping me from letters in here, and then everything stops working. Okay, so you can see you've got value all over the place now. Or there's nothing that stops me from putting in the number from hell. And there's nothing that stops me, and we want to prevent that. And I'm going to give you a couple of different methods of validation that will help us do that. However, I'm going to go to my extra information list. The first thing I'm going to do is create a new list. I'm going to create a game genre list. Now, I'm not going to lie to you guys, this game genre list is going to be kind of off the cuff. It's going to be the first game genres that I think of. In the big wide world, you would have all of the game genres in there, I guess, and you would potentially put them into this great big long list for people to choose. However, I just want to have an example of game genres that could be used within a validation list. So you can adapt this. However, one thing I'm not going to be doing is going through and matching the game genre with the correct game. That's not the purpose of this. What I will be doing is seeing whether the actual validation list works or not. So let's put in some game genres. So you've got RPG, you've got sports, you've got simulation, you have strategy, you have first person shooter. Let's have one more. Why is it always the way you can't think of one? I mean, there's thousands of them. MMO. I'm not a big fan of MMOs, but ultimately it's just a list. Now I'm going to name this again. Notice how I don't the titles here are more for show, right? The titles here are for me to kind of know what each one of these does, as opposed to actually being part of the lists themselves. So this game genre, you notice I do only highlight the genre, you don't highlight the title itself. Otherwise, you give the end user the option to choose the title as the actual genre itself, and we don't want that. We just want the actual genuine options. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to call it game genre as before. Well, I didn't call it game genre before, but this is how I named the previous one. I'm going to click return. Remember to hit return, otherwise you will not the table name will not be retained. Now I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to select this column here that we've not touched so far. So I'm going to add the validation here. So we're going to add a couple of different types of validation, but this first one is going to be a drop-down list. And I'm going to click on data validation, and Excel is quite good at helping you with this stuff. Alright, so I'm going to click in this instance list. We've just created this list. And the source, I can, once to put equals in, I can call the table that we just created, game genre. Now again, if you didn't call your table a name, you would actually have to put in the cell reference, which, because it's actually found in a different sheet, you will find is a lot more complex than would it be otherwise. It's much more in your interests to name these sets of data. Okay, so equals game genre, click OK. Then what you'll find is that I can only select these, and if I try to put some stuff in it, it will say no. It will say computer says no. And again, you can drag it down all the way down. You'll find that you have the same options all the way. So this is your first method of validation. Okay, and you can see straight away that now an end user cannot put something in here that does not exist. Can you rescue Dan S2 edition? Shall we put that in there as a simulation? I think he will appreciate that. Okay. The second method of validation is these items here are really important. Okay, if you just see me be able to put in any data I want into these figures, in reality that's not what we want. Now there's nothing in this instance, there's nothing that's going to stop people from still potentially putting in the wrong data. Let's say if it's between 1 to 5,000, and there's nothing stopping people from doing that. However, we want to be able to stop people from putting in the real wild stuff, I suppose you could say. So again, data validation, and this time we're going to put in a whole number, and we're going to specify. I mean, I have I think the smallest one is 0, so I can't put it below 0, can I? Well, that would be a minus figure if I put it below 0. That's a stupid thing to say, Michael. I mean, something like what's the next one? 3, 4, yeah. So 0 will be the highest, and let's put 5,000 as the top one. I'm just gonna double check that I don't have a figure higher than 5,000. I'm pretty sure I don't. In fact, I don't think I have a figure higher than 4,000. But let's put 5. Now your validation does not have to match this. Okay, you can put in different figures if you want. I don't know why, but my box looks a bit funny on my screen. I don't know why that is happening. But anyway, so you can include an input message. Okay, so input message. Please input a value between 0 to 5,000. You need to be a little bit careful with this because actually, I think if you had this consistently, you would annoy your end user. Because this is going to basically display a message whenever you click on one of these cells. I'm going to leave this here so I can show you what it looks like, but I don't think it's something necessarily that I would include on on all of the cells. You know, maybe, I mean, if I had a data set like this, I would probably put the message somewhere else so they could all see it. But, excuse me, but at the same time, I think it would annoy me if it was on every single one of it. It'd be like, do you genuinely think I'm a bit of an idiot? Which you guys may or may not agree with, I don't know. But error alert, right, so error alert is what happens when you put the wrong data in. So, wrong data, please enter a value between 0 to 5,000. And I believe you actually have a couple of different, there you go. I imagine that if you so wished, you could probably go into your settings on your computer and change the actual values of those, the actual pictures to something that's a bit fancier. In fact, you probably could within the VB script. It's not really necessary. I'll leave mine at stop sign. Yeah, so you can see that wherever I click it now, I get this message. I think this would irritate me long term. Not that it's particularly difficult to irritate me. Okay, so first of all, first test, let's put some letters in here. There we go. So we have an error message pop up. Second test, let's put the number that is outside of the range. There we go, error message. This is what we want. So, okay, you know, ultimately, if the number is wrong between 0 and 5,000, then it's wrong. But it at least prevents the if you put in letters, which is obviously going to be a no-no, it's going to be wrong. But also, if you put in something that, you know, maybe you slip a character and you end up with like a 5-figure number in there, which, as you can see, would be, you know, quite a way out from some of the other characters, some of the other figures which are in here, sorry. So, you know, we're just trying to prevent that. All this other stuff, maybe apart from the cost, is reliant basically on this and on this, you know. And, you know, you'll find that, you know, if you change one of the grades here, that a load of these figures are going to change. You know, if I choose a grade 4 here, then, you know, all of, you know, this is like what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You've got like 7 figures that change because of that one thing. It's all automated and all correct. You know, because the computer's not going to get it wrong. As long as your formula and functions are correct, the computer will get it right. Okay. The issue is if you put the formula or the function incorrect the first time, then it will never be right because it doesn't automatically sit there and go, well, actually, I think it might be wrong. You know, it just does what you tell it to. So one more thing that I want to show you in this video is the overall figure sheet. So I want to bring together some values from different sheets. Now you've got to appreciate that I have not gone through all of this process for these other sheets. This is what you guys are going to have to do. So you're going to have to apply this stuff to the other sheets. But I hope you can kind of see that what I'm going to do for this one sheet you would then repeat for the others. And actually this is one of the easier things to do. Overall PL sheet. Okay. You'll find that I don't like Calibri very much. Alright. Sheet. Sheet the right thing? Let's call it area. And we want game, music, film, overall, rating. Just realised I haven't named my sheets. You should name your sheets. So what you'll end up with with a workbook of any size is you'll wind up with absolutely hundreds of, well, not hundreds, but lots and lots and lots of different tabs. So, I mean, this is already a 5-sheet workbook. There's going to be at least one, probably two more worksheets going in here. And what, imagine if they're all called sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, sheet 4, sheet 5. You might kind of be okay with it on the day that you create these sheets, but if you come back to them a couple of days later, then the chance of you remembering what each one of them does is progressively lessened. And other people who are coming to use your sheets will have no chance, So, yeah, do name. And also we can do things, and I would expect you to do this, to do things like tab coloring. So we can change the tab color. And you can have various different themes for your tab colors. I mean, I'm just kind of clicking on them a bit randomly at the minute. It does, if you have various different themes here. So let's say, for example, anything relating to game could be red, anything relating to music could be blue. I mean, obviously, all of mine are quite markedly different from each other. But you can kind of see that if you have many different worksheets, then this can come in handy quite easily, quite quickly. Okay, so I've got my area, and what I'm going to do is that I'm going to bring in the overall figures for these. Well, I would say 3 areas. I mean, I can't bring them in for 3 areas because I've only done one. You guys are going to have to apply the other 2 and bring it in yourself. Then I'm going to add them up, and then I'm going to give it a rating. The rating is going to be an if statement. So what I'm going to do in here, and you need to be a bit careful when you start doing this, because if you start clicking around, when your formula will get all over the place quite quickly. You need to know what you're going to click on when you go into this game sheet. And the answer is this value here for total. And like I said, you need to be careful, because if you start, once you hit equals here and you start clicking around going into other places, you can wind yourself in quite a tricky formula quite quickly, which is not what you want. Whereas in reality, it's really kind of straightforward what you need to do. So you hit equals, then you go into the tab that you want, and then you just click on the cell you want, and I have equals game, so it says the worksheet where you're going to, and then the cell, and then you hit enter. That's it. Okay. And you repeat it for the other 2. Now obviously I haven't done them, so I can put in naught. You guys will actually put in a formula which links to the other worksheets. So you get an overall figure down here. I'm going to add these up. There's no need for a sum here. Okay, I would not average these, because actually you are going to have quite a different value set, I imagine. So having averages, I don't think would be a particularly worthwhile thing to do. I would expect you to have graphs further down the line, and they're pretty straightforward. You can have a pie graph for this. And so we have a value of 4.2 mil. Now, we're going to put an if statement in here. And the if statement is ultimately something that I would, or you will need to turn into a nested if statement. So an if statement within an if statement. And I'm going to challenge you to, I'll create one here for you. One of my challenges to you would be to take this standalone if statement and to see if you can work out how you would create nested if statement. Okay. And when we talk about an if statement, I'll write it in here and I'll make it a bit bigger. So, if statement, if something meets criteria, display true, else display false. Okay, so that's just the standalone if statement. If you are having a nested if statement, and it depends how you would set this up, because you can put the nested if in either of these. But let's just say, if something meets criteria, display true. Otherwise, run a second test. If it meets that, display true. I don't know why I put the speech marks there. Display true, otherwise false. So you have three different answers that you can obtain from this nested if statement. Now, like I said, my challenge to you will be to create this nested if statement as independently as possible. I'll show you how to do the first one, and unfortunately there is nothing here that, or at least there hasn't been in the past. No, there isn't. There is only the standalone if statement here. Okay, so you will need to look at it, and you then will need to adapt it yourself. And ultimately the second if can either go in the true or the false. That's your call to make. However, you'll need to adapt your if statement to reflect that. So let's click OK. Logical test. Okay, so a logical test is, in this instance, is this overall figure. So we can click on it, and then let's say if it's over 5 million. I'll work out the number of zeros I've got there. Okay, C over 5 million. So this is going to give us a false result. Okay, so value of true, good. Value of false, bad. Okay, so it should give us a result of bad. The nested if, you can put more gradients of opinion here. So you can say that something, let's say it's over 5 million, is good, and then you can say maybe if it doesn't meet that, so you can run a second test. Well, okay, it's not over 5, but is it over 4 million? And if it meets that, then you could say it's okay. And then if it's under that, then it's going to be bad. And you can add as many if statements in there as you want. And yes, they can get quite complex. There is no doubt about that. I'm not asking you to do any more than one nested if here, but at the same time you should attempt to do that. I'm going to click OK, and we can see that we just have the rating of bad. So basically what you'll end up doing is if I was in your position, you have your one if statement here, and I would copy that, and then you would paste it. You'll need to make some adaptations to it. Okay, I'm not going to give you everything. You guys are level 3 students. You can have a look at this. So, and also, I'd imagine that you've used the nested if within your programming. You would then replace one of these, probably this one, with the second if statement. Okay. Okay. So we've now been running half an hour for this second video, so I'm going to pause here. We're going to start moving on to stuff now which we haven't covered in class, and like I said, it's going to be starting to look at things like macros, going to look at things like splash screens, and also starting to look at, slightly ironically, I know because we've already started to create a spreadsheet, we're going to start looking at how we would plan our spreadsheet. And like I said, I know it's slightly ironic, but ultimately it's easier to plan your sheet after you've had some examples of actually working with a sheet. So I mean, in the great wide world, you would actually do your planning before you actually put your or anything in a spreadsheet. However, you would find it very difficult to plan without having had any experience of using a spreadsheet. So yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.